You hear lots on TV about research and the massive breakthroughs that are being made for people that have had spinal injuries. But really, in my experience, research has been something that's very hard to come by. It's very difficult to find some research that's being done that can genuinely help people now, not in 10 years' time, but now. Well, there's some research being done at Glasgow University that is helping people now. They're not claiming to get people walking or any miracle cures, but they've taken technology that's been researched for many years and using it in a practical way. It's FES, functional electrical stimulation. I travelled to Glasgow University to meet the man in charge of the FES project. Professor Ken Hunt has been working with FES for the past 7 years. He explained to me how he's taking old technology and using it in new, innovative ways.
Yes, I think the technology of FES is, as you say, it's very old. It's probably been around for over 40 years. But I think in the initial stages of the research, people were probably focusing on very difficult issues like standing and maybe the idea of getting people to walk again. But I would say that the focus of people's attention has really shifted over the years to moving away from the idea of necessarily getting back to walking. What we're really interested in doing is utilising the muscle contraction in some useful way. So we can activate muscles in a controlled way to get the legs moving for cycling, for example, or we can stimulate the arm muscles to get the arms moving around in a cyclic motion to do arm exercise, pushing against a load to get the exercise, or to improve someone's gait pattern while they're walking on a treadmill. We can show people what they might be able to achieve during their rehabilitation and subsequently when they leave hospital and go out and have a life again, get back to work, get back to their family and so on. What they will be looking to do at that point is to have some means of maintaining their fitness, doing exercise, trying to address some of the secondary medical issues that can happen in the long term as a result of the spinal injury. So people can look at what we're doing and decide if that's something that would interest them and something they'd like to do.
Pressure sores are a big problem for people who've had spinal injuries. Is this going to help with that?
That's what we're hoping. The stimulation increases the bulk, increases the vascularization, the blood flow to the muscle, and these things in combination we're hoping will really reduce the likelihood that somebody might get a pressure sore in those areas.
Before anyone is accepted into the research project, they must first undergo a series of assessments. Michael's first test is to have his seating pressures taken.
Okay, hold your breath. Measurement. Just go up and down.
No, just up and down. I thought you want me up with that. Just up and down.
Michael, who is a T9 complete paraplegic, wants to take part in FES cycling. The tests he is having will determine his suitability. This bone density scan will check if his bones are strong enough to withstand the stresses involved.
Well, here we are taking a measurement of the bone density in Michael's tibia. Following immobilization after a spinal cord injury, the bone density tends to reduce. What we're hoping is that when Michael starts doing the cycling program with reasonably intensive exercise, that we're trying to look at how that's going to affect the bone density.
How quickly will someone who's been injured lose their bone density? And is this really a problem?
Yes, I think it starts to happen almost immediately after immobilization. So during the first year after an injury, it would be typical to have lost 40 or 50% of the bone density.
40 to 50%?
Yeah. And this is important because a number of years down the line, the bones will become weak and will be subject to fracture as a result of fairly minor or even imperceptible trauma.
The reason why we use this machine instead of the routinely used DEXA scanner is that we can actually see the difference between two different types of bone structure within the bone. So at the ends of the bone, there's spongy bone or trabecular bone, and in the shaft there's a cortical shell. and we're able to differentiate between the two types of bone here. And we are monitoring people from the start of their participation in the cycling project, and then rescanning them at the end of the cycling project to see if we've managed to have a positive influence on the bone density over that time.
The final test Michael undergoes is an MRI scan. If Michael is selected for the FES project, then these tests will be repeated after a period of FES training to accurately measure any benefits he's gained from taking part in the project.
We use MRI scanning to look at cross-sections of muscle, so we can see the effect on muscle bulk of the FES, and we see the muscle bulk increasing quite rapidly.
Right, you okay?
Yeah.
Next scan's going to be about a minute, okay? Nice and steady for me.
We've done baseline 3-month and 6-month scans on Graham. After the first 3 months of cycling, his gluteal muscle thickness had increased 50%, which is a fairly rapid result.
Sadly for Michael, all the tests that he had eventually determined that he wasn't suitable for the FES project. So although this is a research project that I'm sure is going to help very many people, for some people it's just no good. But we're on our way to meet Sean, who's been using FES for quite a long time and is so committed to hand cycling using it, he's bought his own kit. Sean Roke has been tetraplegic for 18 years. Although he has some sensation, his injury is otherwise complete at C6. This is the first research project he's had the opportunity to get involved in, and he's very enthusiastic about it.
That's fine. Yeah, she'll hear me. Yeah, and the load.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. And, I really had this opportunity arise when I received a letter from the spinal unit saying that they were going to be undertaking this research project, and would I be interested in coming along? I thought, why not? I've got nothing to lose. It might be quite interesting. I'll give it a shot. I found that in those everyday aspects of life that you have to cope with in a wheelchair, such as transfers on and off the bed and in and out of the car, were that little bit easier because I'd been made stronger. We're told continuously that we should always exercise more. And as a tetraplegic, if you can have the opportunity to do so, you know that you're going to gain something from it. At some point, your health will improve. You're looking after your heart. That's something that we must all do, really. It doesn't take a great deal, 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week or so. I do 3-4 sessions a week and vary it, do an increased workload or a longer period up to half an hour, just build up the stamina.
So for someone that's watching this just now, that's seeing you attached to a machine with wires and things going on, they're thinking, how's this going to help me? What would you say to them?
Oh, it would help you in more ways than you can think, really. You will notice your stamina improving, your strength recovering, and it will help you in your everyday life.
We're doing really well.
You're feeling the strain now?
You do feel it, yes. When your breath starts to quicken a little bit. Towards the end of the session, if you've been having a particularly hard workout, you feel the pulse. But when you stop and just relax, you think, oh, I'm glad I did that.
Because it's set at a negative work rate, which means that the motor is significant.
So that's the session over now. How are you feeling?
Fine. It wasn't too difficult.
Bit out of breath, but
Slightly, yes.
invigorated.
Certainly.
So you'll be ready to be going home and doing another session tomorrow, will you?
Without a doubt.
Spinal cord injury units have been extremely successful in reducing death and spinal cord injury in the early stages, principally by looking after the skin, reducing pressure sores and reducing kidney complications. The 2 areas that we've not been successful is heart disease and suicide. And heart disease remains the commonest cause of death in the later stages of spinal cord injury. The reason that there is a higher level of cardiac disease is because people do not have the opportunity to exercise. If we can encourage them or provide facilities which will improve or increase their exercise, then we hope we will reduce the rate and severity of the heart disease that people who are in a wheelchair suffer. What we think is that the FES project will be applicable to the majority of people who have got spinal cord injury at the present, because they all have fitness issues and they all want to have an extended life expectancy.
So if you could speak to the camera as if you giving your words of wisdom to someone that's watching this is thinking, why should I get involved in that? I've heard doctors tell me I should be doing physio and I should move my legs. I'm in a chair. This is the way it is. It's not going to change. How do you say to them, go and do it. It's worth it?
Well, we spend a lot of time teaching you how to look after your skin, your bladder and your bowels. One of the things we haven't spoken about is your heart. FES cycling and other exercise programs will do exactly the same for your heart as the rest of your body. And so maintain your fitness, reduce the amount of illness you get, and increase your life expectancy. That's the message that we're giving out to the able-bodied people. It's exactly the same position for someone who's in a wheelchair or has restricted mobility.
My name's Lindsay Jamieson. I'm an exercise physiologist working for Ken Hunt, one of Ken Hunt's PhD students. So my role is to run the treadmill walking study that we're doing. We recruit people who have got an incomplete spinal cord injury, who can walk, who are independent walkers with or without orthosis.
Like all the participants on the walking study, Stephen's injury is incomplete at T6. However, he can't walk without a Zimmer frame and knee caliper. Using FES, he doesn't need the knee caliper.
What are you doing here, Lindsay?
Just putting the electrodes on so that it hits the perineal nerve. And we use that to get the flexion withdrawal to lift the foot up when we require it to step. Stephen doesn't need it on his right leg, but the control's not as good on his left. Something that our subjects enjoy being able to do as well. I think gives them the opportunity to get up and to get up on their feet again and to be walking.
So on each step you're pressing your button to assist Stephen with his left leg?
With his left leg, yes. Just as you see, he takes a step with his right leg just as the hip comes over the knee. You just press it there and it lifts the leg up and over.
So are you doing something now you couldn't do if you weren't on a treadmill?
If I wasn't on the treadmill, I wouldn't step the way I wouldn't walk the way I'm walking just now. I would just swing through, which would be swinging both legs through at the same time. It's harder to move my left leg, so if I didn't have the stimulation on my left leg to actually step it through, it'd be very hard because you need to lift it and drag it. But that's another reason for doing this, because it will help to strengthen the muscles and the bones in my legs. So
once the research project's finished, we're using this project to gather evidence as to whether this form of training should be implemented as a rehabilitation strategy, in hospitals, whether it comes to the point that there'll be somewhere that these subjects can actually go and train if they want to, but we need to get the evidence to show that it's worthwhile doing it before anything like that.
Jill has an incomplete spinal trauma at T9. To help strengthen her muscles, she regularly uses FES at home, Today Jill has come to the university to walk on the treadmill using the support of a harness.
Okay, let's go. I've managed to get some movement back in my legs, because I started out with no movement at all.
No movement?
None at all. And gradually, a little bit at a time, from using FES, I managed to get a little bit of movement back. And now I've got sufficient that I can actually do some walking. But having the harness on prevents me from falling.
So is the driving force behind you that you want to walk again?
Yes.
You had no hesitation at all in answering that?
None. I do. Life would just be much easier if I could walk about.
Are you prepared to say that's where this is taking you? Or is that a bit of a long shot?
I think that's a bit of a long shot. I'm actually happy to do this in terms of getting some exercise and basically approaching it from I'll wait and see what happens. I don't want to set myself up for something of, this is going to make me walk, because if I set myself up for that, I would be setting myself up for a potential disappointment, because there's absolutely no guarantee that that's what this will do. If I wasn't able to do something like this, I know psychologically I'm not good, and albeit that there's an adjustment to living in the chair, it's not the same as being able to get the high from doing the sports and things I did before.
So that's what happens when you've had enough. You get hoisted up.
You get pulled up out the way.
And the first training session that you did to get to the 15 minutes in total took us 5 walking moves. First one was 1 minute and 10 seconds. The second one, 2 minutes 15. The third, you walked for 3 minutes.
So that 10.5 you've just done is the longest?
That's the longest I've ever done. Yeah, that's the longest straight.
And that's twice as much as you could do 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
So for someone watching this just now that perhaps is lying in a spinal injuries unit, having just had their life devastated, and they're seeing this, how does it happen? How does someone like Jill get involved in a project like this?
Well, with Jill and with Stephen as well, we were able to get in touch with them through the spinal unit at the Southern. All the doctors know of all the different projects that are going on in the university, and we sort of send them a list of basic inclusion criteria that we need for people to join the study. The likes of, for example, for mine, you have to have an incomplete injury. You have to be able to do a wee bit of walking on your own. There's various different things that you have to look at, but it is something that if people are interested in, they are able to contact their consultant, and from then they can speak to Ken and myself, and we can see if we can slot them into a project that we do, that we're running.
It's been over 3 months since we filmed with Jill and Stephen now, and both of them have more than doubled the times they're doing on the treadmill. But today we're looking at FES cycling. Now, the cycling project's run in conjunction with University College in London and Professor Nick Donaldson. But today it's Professor Hunt who will be showing us what it's all about.
Neil is wearing a pair of shorts there with electrodes sewn into them, so we're stimulating the quadriceps, the hamstrings and the gluteal muscles. And as Neil's legs are cycling round, there's a sensor built in here to the crank which measures the position of his legs, the position of the cranks all the time, and that measurement is used to switch on and off the different muscles at the right time so the legs keep pushing round in the right direction. So that's what happens as the legs are going round. So if Neil just starts turning the throttle, the legs will start going, and he's off on his own now.
So Neil can control how much power he's putting into his legs, and that affects his speed.
Yeah, that's right. Neil's controlling that, and the signal from the crank measurement and the throttle, they go into the stimulator, which is situated at the back of the trike there on the rack. So the actual stimulation is coming from the box at the back of the trike, and you can see the wires coming out of that, which go into the plugs and the shorts there. So everything's wired up. and that's basically how it works. And when we're out there cycling in the park, he's controlling the throttle with his left and the gears and the brakes with his right hand.
It's probably the biggest rush I've had since breaking my back, actually. I was a speedway rider and broke my back, so that was nearly 8 years ago now. So being used to speedway on motorbikes, it's, you know, you get a buzz where you're sitting in a car, you can be doing 100 mile an hour, but you don't really know you're doing it. You know, you're probably only doing 20 mile an hour coming down there, but because you're in the open air, it's yeah, it was quite good.
How was that, Neil?
Quite a rush. Yeah, it was a bit exhilarating coming down that hill. It was got more speed up than I anticipated, so yeah, it was pretty good.
Must feel pretty good to be cycling through the park and not in a chair.
It's really good, yeah, it's great fun because, well, one, you're not actually using your arms, and I think you get a better workout, to be honest, than you do being in a wheelchair.
And so, no one knows you're paralysed.
No one knows I'm paralysed, yeah. Obviously, there's only so far you can go with FES, and then if I'm out here with FES and my legs get tired, that's me stuck. But we're working on trikes in the lab that have got motors built into them, so if you do run out of gas yourself, you've also got a motor to back you up. If things keep going the way they are, I'd be quite happy, you know, knowing if you've got the backup of the motor, there's no reason why you can't go to places like this on a nice sunny day, Strathclyde Park, anywhere. You could just go for a cycle, you know, with your mates if you wanted to. If they wanted to do it, you'll probably find that able-bodied people that can go for a cycle ride don't bother. You know, where people that can't want to. It's always the old case scenario, isn't it? It's like if you can do it, you don't, and if you can't, you want to. So, yeah, but you don't find that out until you can't do anything. So
you'd say to anyone that's looking at these shots of you, inevitably thinking, "Oh, I'd like to do that."
Yeah, do it. You've got to go for it. You only get one chance in this life, and it's too short not to do things.
Having seen Neil cycle around this park, I have to admit to being quite jealous. To be able to move around with such anonymity, for no one to know that he's in fact paralysed, must be a tremendous feeling of freedom. That, combined with all the health benefits involved with FES, surely makes it worth getting involved in a project like this.
Andy McLeod, I'm the liaison officer for Spinal Injury Scotland. We are the support charity for people with spinal cord injury in Scotland. It's imperative that you keep yourself physically fit, and anything that gives you a bit of a cardiovascular workout is obviously a benefit to anyone anyway. But something that will aid you in keeping healthy over the longer term is a huge benefit. And also, if you can feel in yourself physically better, I think it's generally accepted that people feel better psychologically too.
Do you see people cycling around on trikes through the parks and living a kind of liberated life from a wheelchair? Do you think that's a reality?
I think that's a very realistic proposition, absolutely.
I mean, that's quite exciting to think that you can actually leave your home not in a chair.
Well, if you have maybe a young family, if you've got a couple of small children, you want to go and do the very basic things of help them to learn to ride a bike in the local park, then you can do, and on their terms.